There were things I've done that little old me would be like, what the F? You know? Like going solo traveling for 5 months, going to Australia by myself, doing these incredibly cool things that don't really relate to the richness that comes with a paycheck, but what you give out, you get back. So I'm always helping other people and wanting to see them succeed just as much as me, because there's room for success.
You're not cut from the same boring cloth. Were you always that way?
You're listening to the Real Business Connections Network. Real Business Connections Network. Powered by Balbert Marketing, LLC. Subscribe now and check us out at realbusinessconnections.com. Enjoy the show.
So, Naida, before we jumped on the show, you had mentioned, actually in the intake form, that you fall asleep to heavy metal music. What the hell?
Correct. Honestly, it's zen for me. I have no idea. You know how you grow up and people are like, oh my God, it's a phase. I was like, it is not a phase, Mom. For some reason, since I was a kid, Evanescence, I think, was my awakening into heavy metal and rock. And then it segued into bands today like Bring Me the Horizon, Bad Omens. I don't know what it is. I think it's the charge behind it and the passion. And I know that it can feel quite angry, but if you listen to the lyrics, it's very emotional and there's something very cathartic for me. So I can genuinely fall asleep to that. And I think people have caught me doing it before. They were like, I don't know what she's listening to, but I can hear something very violent in her ears.
So you're laying down, what would be your go-to violent track or band?
Off the top of my head, Concrete Jungle, Bad Omens.
Very cool. We'll add that to the notes. And funny way to start, but one thing I like about you is you're different. You're not cut from the same boring cloth. Were you always that way?
Oh, that's really kind to hear. Thank you. I think, yes, I have always felt a bit different, maybe like the black sheep. And that kind of started from childhood in school. I think I never felt quite like I belonged in certain places. And I always had a different answer than other people did. And it actually made me question myself a lot because I wouldn't go with the common answer. I'd go with something that was different. And I always felt like I was wrong or incorrect, which is ironic because of where I'm at today, which we'll pivot to, I'm sure. And I do think, I mean, I don't know if it's very audacious to say that I feel quite unique, but I do feel as though it's a skill that I've learned to nurture and embrace, where once I thought it was a weakness, I now do see it as a strength. So thank you for commenting on that. I do appreciate it.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I was the same way. When did you start to see things differently?
That's a great question. I think I can definitely track it back to a key moment for me was at school when we were told to go to university. And I actually never wanted to go. I didn't want to pursue higher education, despite the fact that I was incredibly academic. I really enjoyed the artsy side of things, and I really wanted to pursue acting. That was one of the first things I think I wanted to do when I was younger. And my mom had kind of put a bit of pressure on get the degree, then do the fun stuff. And at school as well, there wasn't another option. Entrepreneurship was as elusive as I think it sometimes feels today for a lot of people. It's not talked about. We all know how to get a job. We all know how to do uni because we're taught to do that literally since we came out of the womb. You know, that's the plan, that's the formula. And again, talking about this difference, I was like, there has to be something else because I don't want to do that. And that doesn't call me. So I think that was a pivotal moment for me because I'd always had ideas and was always looking at ways that you could make money from hobbies and side hustles and things. And at that time, I just didn't think entrepreneurship was viable because it wasn't taught or shown. And I imagined it to be the demographic of, 50-year-old white men in a suit, not people or women like me, young people, that you can build from your bedrooms. That just wasn't the representation. And it's nice to see that changing now. So I feel like I was definitely onto something if I look back and I'm like, 17-year-old me was
Yeah.
onto something. And, if we could go back in time, would have nurtured that idea a bit more rather than discover it a lot later in life. But c'est la vie,
Yeah. That's a brilliant realization. I'm thinking back, it was college. I was never the sharpest tool in the shed. Never. Like I was a 2 out of 5 in elementary school, like a C, maybe a B student in middle and high school. Then I went to college or university. I got all like A's. And it was just because I was able to apply myself. I got really good at research. And I've always been a deep thinker. I think overthinking is a rude way of saying it. I was always a deep, inquisitive thinker. And we were doing a group project. And yapping is nothing against yapping, but our group would spend 45 minutes yapping. And I was very busy. And I'm like, let's get to it. Let's get to it. Let's get to it. And I forget what I said or why, but one of the girls said, you overthink too much, Ben. So guess what I did that night?
overthink.
I overthought about it all night. And I came to the realization that's why I get better grades than you. That's like a gift. My overthinking, when applied in the right circumstance, in an entrepreneurship circumstance or at a business looking to innovate, that is actually like a massive gift. It made me feel like I was like overthinking, and I even overthought about overthinking, but that's actually what got me to where I am today. My willingness to go deep and get input and do research and like do whatever I can to make it work. So like we both shared two different stories. You kind of talk about this is like the core of your business. Is there a right or wrong way of doing things?
Oh, so glad you asked. And in my eyes, no. The wrong way is doing it to someone else's plan or script. The right way is following what you think is right and learning through that. So make all of those mistakes because they are lessons and figure out what's right for you, because what I tell you to do will be the complete opposite of what I actually want to do intuitively. And I honestly use this phrase every day, but there is no right or wrong. You just have to figure out what's right for you. And that comes from a lot of tapping into you, your identity, what lights you up, what you're passionate about, what do you hate, what drains you. These are questions, you're talking about overthinking. I'm also a huge overthinker, used to think that was a flaw, but like you, it's a deep thinking aspect because you are honing into bigger existential questions that are actually going to help you to grow rather than lead a life that's actually very out of sync and unfulfilling. So, my concept is now we have so much opportunity and flexibility to create a life in alignment. And often you'll see a lot of people who are, depressed, anxious, stressed, and 9 times out of 10, it's because they're not doing what they actually want to do. And that's what's wrong.
Help us get clarity, whether it's an action step or something we can write down and like tell us. So we want to live a life in alignment. Well, what does that even look like in the first place? Do we need an org chart? Like, how do I know if I'm aligned or not?
I think the first place to start is your values. What makes sense to you? Because that's going to be different. So just a brainstorm or a mind map of like everything that makes you who you are. So let's say, for example, purpose is big for you, legacy, impact, empathy, all those values, right, that shape who you are. You can get someone to help you out with that. If you're not so in tune with it, you can ask your friends, what are 3 things that you like about me? And start building up the data. And I think when you start seeing what qualities you like, what you're good at, what maybe those flaws are, you can build a better picture of how you want to show up. But then you can start seeing, okay, what are my values? Because if I actually don't care about making 100K a year, that's not my purpose. What I actually do care about is working with charity organizations and making a difference in the social space, and maybe I only get $30,000 a year salary, but I'm fulfilled because I'm giving back, the altruism value, right? So I think you have to start with values first and get some feedback from other people that will help you build up a profile or that persona. And it's hard if you spend a lot of time living someone else's life that they've built for you, which is difficult because there's a lot of social comparison, right? What your parents want you to do, how you think you should live the life, what success means to you versus someone else, and all those definitions are so fundamentally different. So yeah, it is kind of grounding down into who you are as a person, not what people expect you to be.
You know, I talk about this and I learn about it, and I've been doing the work for by now, like I feel like it's been like a decade, and I'm still doing the work because I feel like I'm so there's always someone who's stronger than me. There's always someone who has more money than me. There's always someone who is traveling more than me. There's always someone who just seems to launch a product and it just always seems to hit. And I'm like, what the heck am I doing wrong? And what I've started to realize that I'm not doing anything wrong. They're just either farther along or I'm on a different path. But the
100%.
comparison drives me crazy, dude.
Oh, honestly, tell me about it. And it gets us all. Even the most switched on people will still compare. And you'll still have days where you're like, oh God, I'm just not where I think I should be or where I need to be right now. And I always think, okay, well, based on whose timeline? Based on what concept? And why are you comparing your day 1 to someone else's day 100? And even though people are sharing all these wins and milestones, what's the truth? You don't know. Anyone can say I make 6 figures a year. Are they actually? You know, go on their company's house, go on their tax records. What's the actual take home? No one's being that candid about it. And I do think the comparison game is one that you will never win. It's the arch enemy of every entrepreneur, of every idea that you want to do, of every hobby that you want to take up, and everything that you want to pursue. You have to block out that noise. We were never, ever meant to see this much information spewed at us, okay, as humans. That is a lot to digest. And that version of, you know, seeing someone who's so successful based off what you believe success is so damaging because it's internal. Going back to that theme of alignment, asking yourself, what does success mean for me? Because my version is, I actually want to be happy. I want to have time freedom, location freedom. I don't want to have someone breathing down my neck 24 hours a day. And I want to be doing something that I enjoy. And yeah, I might not be the richest person in the world, like Layla Hormozi, who, you know, still an idol, but I'm me. And this is how I show up and live my one life. And I know it sounds really woo-woo and like, oh my God, you're making it sound so much easier than it is, but it's a practice. So going back to what you said there, it's a growth journey and there is no end because you're going to keep growing and learning and adapting and building. And that's what makes it quite fun, you know?
A good friend of mine and a mentor and client, everything to me, Brian Bogart, the way he puts it is there is no end destination, only constant evolution of self.
Yeah.
And I'm just dropping the mic for him because like there really isn't an end destination. Guess what happens when you get to the top of the mountain? There's another mountain. And what often happens is you go up Cringe Mountain. It really sucks. You get to the top of the mountain. There's another mountain. And what you have to do is you have to go down the mountain to get up the mountain. Then you're going up Cringe Mountain again. It doesn't get any easier. My goal, and I think this is one thing you do, is you help bridge the gap between the mountains.
My new tagline.
Does that make sense though? Because that's why I try to do this in my community. I know you do this with your clients. Is it's easy to fall back down to zero, but if you can find the right peer support, the right mentor, you don't have to fall back down to zero. You can skip to the next mountain if you do things properly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a great analogy. And I think to echo on that, it's acknowledging your wins. The reason why we compare so much to other people is because we're not focusing on where we are now because we're always looking at where we need to go instead of focusing on how have I achieved and ticked things off the list as I've gone. One of my biggest goals, and I look back on and I laugh. I wanted to work from a cafe. I wanted to sit on my laptop and write and have a coffee with my AirPods and tune out the world and have that really romantic writer life. And I did that and I achieved that. And I remember feeling bliss at this point.
Mm.
And I did that so many times it became boring because I was like, what's the next thing? Right? That's just human nature. It's who we are. We do evolve. The goals change. We pivot in business for that same reason, right? Because what we started launching doesn't quite fit. We change, we grow, we adapt. And then when I reflected on all of the things I've actually done in my life rather than what I haven't achieved, that list outweighed the other. Because there were things I've done that little old me would be like, what the F? You know? Like,
Yeah.
going solo traveling for 5 months, going to Australia by myself, doing these incredibly cool things that don't really relate to the richness that comes with a paycheck. But again, it's fulfillment. So acknowledging all those wins and all the steps you took to get there, it might not always look so big, but they're the small, tiny 1%. And that's how you build the self-confidence as well in what you're doing. And without that acknowledgement, without that gratitude, you will always feel like a failure.
The gratitude's key.
Massively. Without it, you will constantly be comparing to not only versions of yourself, having those ego deaths as well, but other people. You'll constantly be in this state of fight or flight because you're anxious about the next thing. And as humans, we don't have the bear chasing us anymore. We have our own thoughts chasing us, telling us that we need to do better. And it's great to help us grow, but we don't want to become complacent, and we equally don't want to be ruled by the negative thoughts, because that can actually lead you to make wrong decisions that aren't aligned.
I want to riff on travel for a moment.
Mm.
And I want to set up a soft landing. I didn't travel most of my life. Relatively poor, issues with health in the house. So I'm not like I'm not the most traveled person. I'm not saying any of this to brag. And I'm setting this up because I want you to riff for a moment. But in the past year, like I've went to Italy and Greece and Montreal, Canada and Mexico. And I've been to like DC and Vegas and Orlando, all within the course of a year. I've just been travel bug. And I was even on a podcast yesterday and they're like, Ben, what are your current goals for the future? And I'm like, waterfalls. Like, but I've been so not focused on my business, like transparently. I've kind of been coasting a little bit and I've been focused on that work-life blend and that travel and this and that because I didn't do it at all in my life. So my question for you and like your experience is, was the traveling a getaway that's unrelated to business, or did it actually help you in your career? I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to that, but was it like a getaway? Like I'm gonna just do my thing and come back to my career, or were they integrated together? What is your experience on that?
I think it definitely depends on the season. So firstly, I love that you've explored and you've taken this time to, coast a bit in business, because that's what it's about. You know, this is your season of exploration and adventure. And hopefully you'll feel rested and it will help you develop and build. And you've taken the time now, right, to invest in yourself and to have these experiences. And again, on the note of comparison, you've done things that lots of people dream of doing. And yet,
I dreamed of doing those things.
There we go. And is that not now a marker for your success?
I think so.
So that's what I mean. It's looking at those things that are like not always work related and looking at other goals that you want to achieve and realizing, oh, I did that. And when you look back on your life and you've got that whole book, right? I always think no one is ever going to comment on how hardworking I was. Like they won't. Oh my God, Naida was so great. She worked until midnight every single day. Like no one is ever going to say that. They're going to talk about the impact that you've had on them, the memories that you shared, and think of all the people that you've, touched and the experience that you've had while you were traveling. Like that just adds to the evolution of who you are. And I think it just makes you more creative and open-minded. So yeah, very exciting. In terms of, for me, when I went traveling, I do think there was an element of escapism. You know, is there more to life than my current reality? And I, at the time, was living at home with my parents. I was about 25, 26, I think. And I just sort of started the business, and I was thinking, I've got all this freedom. I've got all this control and autonomy. Someone said, I'm going to Thailand. Do you want to come? And I was like, sure, I'll go. It just seemed logical. I was like, we've got the capacity to do it. And if not now, when? Because you're always waiting for this perfect moment to plan for. And I think expectation ruins the moment. So I had zero expectation. I hadn't planned a damn thing. My friend, I didn't even want to go to Thailand at first because I didn't really know what was so great about it. I had in my head Bali, and I had, ironically, this picture of, oh my God, I'm going to live out my best life in Bali. I'm going to move there for 6 months.
Yeah.
And the flip of that was I went to Thailand with no expectations and loved every single second of it. It lives in my head rent free. Went to Bali, and I was almost, I know it sounds really privileged, but I was almost disappointed because it hadn't met my expectation. I did not want to move there for 6 months. I didn't want to be there for a week. I enjoyed it for the time that I was there for and the people that I met, but it actually wasn't the place for me. So I think we go because we're looking for escapism, but we're also looking for what else is out there. Because I don't want to live a life of regret and what if. I would rather do the thing, get the knowledge, and see if it was something that I enjoyed, and not sit on that what if. I hate that. That is a level of overthinking and rumination that I don't want because it zaps energy. So I'd rather do it and learn from it and see if it works and if it's part of my journey. And then part of it was building a business with people because I was surrounded by other entrepreneurs and solopreneurs similar age. So there was a community there. And again, it started to feed into this narrative of, okay, this is actually possible. People are making this work. So I learned a lot from the independence of going, but also being with a community of other business owners, learning through them and from their mistakes and having that support network. I think without that, I honestly would have really struggled, and I might have given up a lot quicker because you need a certain amount of resilience in this world to continue. So I think traveling definitely taught me that because I was like, if I can do this, then I can pretty much do anything. Failure is not an option.
There's kind of two things there. There's your internal resilience, but then there's also the peer-to-peer support of finding a community that's there to help you.
Yeah, definitely. You need both. I think you have to build internal resilience because you need to be accountable. You need to do things despite your mood, and you're the one who's responsible to find the client, do the sales call, do the work, have the one-to-one session, and that's up to you. But then the other side of it is, okay, I'm having a bad day and I don't have a team to turn around to and be like, oh God, that was a shit call. I have to reach out to those people and build my own network of supporters as well as accountability buddies who are going to tell me, carry on. I know you want to give up, but carry on. You never know what's going to happen. And as much as you can do that for yourself, humans were never meant to roam this earth alone. And that is especially true for business. People say it takes a village to raise a child. I think it takes a village to grow a business. You need people around you who are just as passionate as you are, who have similar traits or maybe see your blind spots and can fill in those gaps. And yeah, people that are going to shout your name in a room full of others because they want you to get opportunities too. And I am a big believer in what you give out, you get back. So I'm always helping other people and wanting to see them succeed just as much as me, because there's room for success everywhere. That there's no such thing as saturation because, going back to your earlier point, we're all unique in our own way. The British, very UK brand Marmite, if anyone knows what that is. You either love or hate it. And that goes the same for a lot of businesses and service providers. You know, you're not going to fall in love with every single client and vice versa, which makes sense. And therefore, there's a lot of opportunity and capacity out there. So there is room for everybody to succeed, and you can help everyone do that. And you don't need to make it a competition, because that's what leads to scarcity.
Do you have liquid death in the UK?
No, what's that?
I don't want to go on too much of a tangent, but I completely hate it. It's nauseating to me, but it's called liquid death. Now they have white cans, but it originally came in an all black can, and it has like heavy metal style imagery on it. It looks like a crazy energy drink or like some like low quality malt beer. Like it comes in this big tall can. It's just water, but it's water that you pay $3 for a can of. It's just
God.
a really expensive can of water, but the name Liquid Death, which is already kind of like joking. And anytime someone hates on them or says, you need Jesus or all these things, they turn the hate into testimonials. Like they do everything differently. They're the most contrarian brand ever. And like, I hate it because it's really expensive and it's water, but I'm imagining the guy or the gal drinking liquid death, listening to their death metal, going to bed, and just like feeling at ease. Like their brand loyalty is so good because they're so contrarian. They're so not willing to conform to the masses. And that is their differentiator. I'm bringing them up and I'm like giving a testimonial, but they irritate me because they charge so much for water.
I'm so with you though. On the principle of buying water, nothing aggravates me more. I'm like, it's free. I don't need to pay for water. But yeah, I think it is definitely, that's a great analogy and an example, because it just shows that there is room for everybody on the table. And there's billions of people on the planet. So you're going to find someone who is interested to work with you. And again, going to that piece of alignment earlier, you asked me, what is that first step? It is values. But then the second part is figuring out what tasks drain you and what lights you up. That's a big part of it. And really picturing what your ideal life looks like. So the question I always ask is, if no one was listening or watching, what would you do? Because it's the external noise and people's opinions and judgments. That's what clouds the intuition. So the more that you can block that out and just go, if I didn't give a shit what other people thought about me and what I'm doing, what would I do?
Yeah.
And that's when you can start filtering out all of the options, and what you'll find at the root of that is, that's what I need to be doing, or something within that element. And it might not be a career, but it might be a hobby or a side hustle. So you can still do both. But at least it's going to give you a bit more, oomph for life.
No,
Yeah, the oomph.
This isn't a one-up. This is just an add-on because I couldn't agree more. But in a business context, I like asking the question, if you already had the $1 million or the £1,000,000, or in some cases, maybe it's 10 million, you're looking for 100 million, what would you do if you already had it? And then the deeper question is, if I offered you $1 million or 10 million or 100 million, what would you not take the money if you knew you could never do it again? So this is the agreement. Let's say copywriting is just a simple example. If I said, here's $100 million, you never get to copyright again. If you're truly passionate, you're going to be like, screw that. You can never surf again. You can never help a starving child again at your nonprofit. Those are $1 million ideas, the ones that you wouldn't take the money if you knew you could never do it again. And ideally, you're not in the scenario. You do something where you wouldn't take the money, but you make money doing the thing that you would have chosen anyways.
I love that. And I'm going to be stealing that, Ben. That is
Please.
Brilliant. Yeah. And I think, again, it shows you what you want and what you don't want. we often joke about it. It's when you're having decision fatigue, flip a coin. You're still going to get the answer that you want, because if it was heads and you're like, oh, I actually wanted tails, then you'll still know, right?
Yeah.
What you actually wanted. And I do believe there is a certain element of logic, but there's also spiritualism. I don't know how, woo-woo you are, but I genuinely believe in universe energy. I don't believe anything is a coincidence. I think every step that you take leads you to where you are. And that includes all of the crap that happens in life. I feel like it builds up to where you want, who you need to be, the person that you are. It just creates your story, and all the bad and the good events, I do think, have such a powerful force. Like even today, I was working with a brand, and I met the social media manager. I know her very well because I worked with her 3 years ago. That's not a coincidence, and I've continued to be a friend with her. She inquired to me about coaching, so I coached her, helped her grow her business. She's now working with a global brand, and every time they've got an event on, she's like, Naida, come. And I met her 3 years ago, and it's all these things. It's like and that time I was so miserable. I hated my job. I really did. It started off really exciting, but it got very toxic very quickly. But it was worth it. It was really worth it, because it's led me to where I am now, and the connections and the opportunities, and you just never know where it's going to go. So I just feel like, having some trust in the process as well, even when everything feels very flat, which can happen in entrepreneurship. There are days, I'm sure you've had maybe a phase or a season perhaps recently where you're like, oh God, why am I doing this to myself?
All the time.
Yeah, it's normal. But then you reflect, and again, it comes back to that gratitude piece. It's fine. It's worth it.
Well, I mean, we expect it to look like a straight line, but it looks like you chugged a bottle of wine, someone span you in a chair 50 times, and then you tried to draw a straight line. That's what it actually looks like.
So real. I think I always use the term, it's never linear, and if you spelt it out, it would look like F-U-C-K. It would literally be like that on a graph, because that's not how life works. It's not how business works. And like I said, you could have the most robust plan, perfectly written, helped by AI, and it still would not go that way, because you can't plan for the unexpected moments and the pivots. Even when I was building a community at the start of this year, I wasn't fully aligned with it. It was draining me a lot, and I kept on asking myself, why am I doing this? And what I realized I was doing is putting in the principles that I wanted for my community and my coaching. And I was like, I can see what's happening here. I'm building something that I actually want, but it's not the right audience, and it's not the right theme, and I'm going to have to scrap it. And it was such a hard decision to make. You don't want to have to quit things because it feels wrong. Again, going back to that, what's right or wrong, quitting feels so wrong. Stopping it feels wrong. But I believe in the concept of quitting if it's not working for you. Don't do things you don't have to do. Like your question, if I paid you $100 million not to, you'd be like, yay. So you don't have to do it. But it's like, you're not shackled. No one is kidnapping you. Like, you actually own that decision. And it might feel scary, and you might feel like you're taking a sidestep or a step back, or like you're back at square one, but you're not, because you've had all of these experiences that are going to make the next thing better, and you can learn from it. So you're never, ever at square one. And I think that's the anticipation that comes with quitting. You're like, oh God, I'm a failure. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're 2.0, 3.0, the evolution, right?
And I wish I had like another 45 to an hour with you, because I like just yapping and chatting with you and seeing the evolution. Where is Naida now? Like, what is your focus? What's your number one right now?
In terms of goals, or what I'm doing at the moment?
So this is what's funny about this podcast is like a personal growth podcast. It's a business podcast, but a personal growth podcast in disguise, because like we talk business, but we also talk about the story behind the story and the person that shows up to the business. So let's frame it for the business professional that's like, I like this conversation. I want to learn more. Like, what are you focusing on? How do you help people?
I love that. And agreed that we could talk for probably forever. I genuinely am pushing the concept of alignment with your life and your career, however that looks. I think we spend a lot of time chasing things that we actually don't want. So we need to ask ourselves, what do I really want and what do I really need from life? And really journal on that. And that's not a question that you're going to answer overnight. It's something that you keep adding to. But I really think, what gives you the biggest buzz? And how can you do more of that in your life? Because it's those moments of pure joy, euphoria, that are really going to stick with you until the end. We were talking earlier about how we create more longevity and live a healthy life. And I think what really underpins it all is happiness and fulfillment.
I joke, it's in my notes because I noticed your Calendly, it says disco call.
Yeah.
What's a disco call?
Do you know what? This started from another season of life. I had my first ever job was in sales, and they are discovery calls, but everyone would shorten them to a disco call. And then I don't know why, I was like, yeah, we'll call it disco and we'll put a disco ball and make it sound more fun, because no one really wants it to be called, a sales call or a discovery call, and it just sounds a bit less formal and fun.
I had never heard of that. So that was like a shorthand at your company. I had never heard of that. I was just imagining like we're going to jam together. You know what I mean? Like,
equally, there is something to be said for that. I do think there was a lot of jam in the session. So
do you want people to book a disco call, connect on LinkedIn? How can we support you?
That's incredible. I would love people to, come follow me on LinkedIn and my Instagram at The Right Way. It's where I speak a lot more about concepts like this. And, if anyone does want a one-to-one session, I'm more than happy to book in 30 minutes to see, where you're at, where you'd like to go, and how I can help you get there.
When you say The Right Way, that's WRITE, correct?
Yes, exactly. The concept is changing your internal script. So you get to rewrite your script from I can't to I can and do the thing.
Ooh, what's a script you've rewritten?
Great question. That I'm not enough. I lived by this rule for a very long time, afraid to take space, afraid to show up, what will people think of me? And perfectionism ruled my life a lot. So I've learned, and I'm still learning, I'm a work in progress, but learning that I am enough as I am, and I can show up as who I am right now. And if people don't like that, that's not my business, let them. And just knowing that I have a lot to give, and I show up with intention always. And, it goes back to that concept of edutainment. I genuinely think that I was born to edutain since 96. I blend everything together, entertainment and education. And if I help one person to, do something that they're scared of or that they're excited to do, but they don't know what that first step is, then I feel like I've made a great difference. And that's what I always want to do, leave the world a better place than when you entered it. And I know it sounds, again, really woo-woo, but that's just how.
It's more cheesy than woo-woo, but
it's a bit.
It's facts, though.
I think so. But yeah, I just, good energy always. So yeah, I would say that is a belief that I'm learning to continuously rewrite what that is on my terms, and that I am enough. What about you? What is a script or belief that you're rewriting?
I mean, that's a big, we're like we're the same human from very far different areas, different genders, this and that. But like, I really resonate with your story. I learned how to play small. I was the shortest kid in school. I'll give you the short version because a lot of listeners have heard this, but shortest kid in school, basketball player, got beat up, got bullied, parents both had issues, literally would slouch. So imagine being small and learning how to make yourself smaller. Like my superpower was invisibility. I could hide and I could be in big crowds and feel completely alone. But what I've learned over time is that I'm good enough now and I'm only getting better. And the other thing I tell myself is you can be and become simultaneously. We have this hope that future Ben is X, Y, and Z. Well, current Ben's good enough. Current Ben is future Ben. We forget that.
Yes. Oh my God, I love that. That is also something I say a lot. We are definitely the same person, just in different bodies. I always say, you know, that version of yourself that you want to be, you know, they are in you. They exist. You just need to dig up all that soil that's covering that version and start to share it out loud. It's not that you have to change yourself. I think that's the biggest misconception, that you have to change who you are. It's actually revealing those parts that you've kept hidden for so long. Like, break free.
Well, and that's why we first connected, and I like your content. I think it's edutaining. There's a lot of boring stuff out there. I can be boring too, but you make it interesting and fun. So I really hope people go follow you on social. And anything else we can do for you, I appreciate you coming on.
Ben, I appreciate this. It's been such a good conversation and grateful to everybody listening. I hope that you got something out of it today. And, you know, if there is something that you're working on, share it with Ben and I and just tell us, this is what resonated with me and this is what I'm going to do. And once you put it out into the ether, you make it happen. And it's important to follow what makes you happy.
Well, thanks again for coming on, and we'll chat soon.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. See you.